The Asian carp, the cane toad, the Burmese python, the European starling and rabbit, the lionfish, all of these animals should never be in human hands. The rationale is straightforward: commerce. When it comes to money, many people overlook the potential implications. In the meanwhile, they may be rather devastating. Let's have a look at them now. You're certainly aware of the impact invading species have on animals, but there's also an intruder in the plant world. It's known as Kudzu. This plant is said to have originated in Japan, where the environment slowed its growth, but once Kudzu arrives in a new region, other plants have no chance. What's the mechanism behind this? Kudzu plants are climbers that expand in all directions via new branches and rhizomes, obstructing light for other plants. Yes, it continues to grow until it entirely blocks the light. Consider being engulfed in a large, thick blanket that prohibits you from moving. Kudzu functions in a similar way. It also suffocates its prey. Plants suffer, leaf litter accumulates, and the soil's composition shifts. It appears that you should avoid kudzu as much as possible. People, on the other hand, may spread it themselves. They do that on purpose to make money. The kudzu vine, for example, was first offered as a decorative plant in 1883 at a New Orleans fair and has since been utilized as cow fodder, soil erosion prevention, and even concealment. People truly believe they had discovered a fantastic answer to numerous of their issues at the same time, until the plant became out of control. It sounds like the start of a horror film. It began to spread wildly and swiftly. Kudzu has even been dubbed the vine that ate the South in the United States. Of course, many have attempted and continue to strive to find a solution to this problem. They chop kudzu down and spray it with pesticides to kill the roots, but goats appear to be the most effective. Yes, even the most common goats aren't taught in any complicated way. They just eat kudzu so quickly that whole thickets may be demolished in 2 weeks, and they won't ask for anything in return. Okay, that's precisely what these creatures do, if you think about it. Plants are what they consume. What if there was a unique team of 60 professionals and one supervisor that could control nature, safeguard the environment, and virtually rescue the world? Okay, I'm talking about animals once more, but this time it's sheep. The Nashville Chew Crew consists of 60 sheep and Dougie, a border collie. Because sheep are four-legged lawnmowers, the team goes throughout Nashville, Tennessee to help reduce exotic plants and restore overgrown areas. They can detect plants from up to 70 feet away and even travel across rugged terrain. Why are we developing new things in the first place? Let's use sheep to mow the lawns. Anyway, imagine how awesome it would be if they could deal with any invading species in the same manner that special forces can. Turns out that when animals solve one issue, humans create others all across the world. The same quiet killer has been slaughtering frogs and salamanders all across the world by devouring their skin alive for decades. I'm referring to the chytrid fungus, which has wiped off at least 501 amphibian species. This scale does not impress you? What if I told you that this is around 1 in every 16 species known to science? The proliferation of this fungus is due to people's actions. Normal human activities such as commerce spread the fungus over the world inadvertently around the turn of the 20th century. It grew into a genuinely devastating weapon along the way. I'm sure I don't need to explain to you how numerous terrifying strains develop and spread. Let me just remind you that amphibians breathe via the skin, which is how the sickness gets deeper into the body and stops the heart. Of course, as soon as scientists recognized that frogs were swiftly vanishing from the world, they hastened to take action, launching the Amphibian Ark project. No, this isn't a massive ship, but the concept is similar. Species on the verge of extinction are maintained in captivity until their population grows and the threat of extinction fades. Normally, animal advocates would prefer to keep all wild animals in the wild, but in this case people have no choice, especially since invasive species are almost always spread by people's actions, and I'm not just talking about cases where people purposely bring the wrong animal to the wrong place. Every year, tourism and trade become increasingly global, allowing humans to go around the world and allowing animals to travel with us without even informing us. They're scavengers who wreak havoc on ecosystems. This is what happened to a Norway rat, for example. This rodent is said to have originated in northern China and nearby places, and then expanded to every corner of the globe. People increasingly established out trade routes as they explored new places in the Middle Ages, and rats followed them everywhere. They also moved to the Pacific Ocean islands in the 18th century, hidden in the holds of ships, and were a genuine tragedy for native species of rat. They continue to devastate ecosystems and carry terrible diseases, and once again, mankind is at fault. Although, let's be honest, who in the 18th century could have imagined a pair of rats coming on a remote island? Burmese pythons, on the other hand, are entirely another story. They're originally from Southeast Asia, but have found themselves on the opposite side of the globe. Between 1996 and 2006, Burmese pythons were extremely popular as pets in Florida, with over 90,000 pythons imported. Allow yourself a moment to comprehend the amount of 90,000. The python farm was also devastated by a cyclone in 1992. The escaping snakes spread across the Everglades National Park, but this is only one of the many reasons why these pythons are so popular. However, when they grow too huge, people just release the snakes. What a fantastic concept! Allow nature to look after them. Consider yourself a snake who unexpectedly finds itself in a location with no natural predators but plenty of tasty food. This is an ideal location for breeding, so get started right away. Foxes and rabbits disappeared in places where pythons thrived, while raccoons, possum, deer, and even lynxes were nearly extinct. Birds and coyote populations were affected, as was the Florida cougar, which was already endangered before the python threat. Perhaps this isn't even a full list. Pythons have the potential to annihilate many more species. They simply eat them quicker than anyone could observe. People frequently fail to recognize that they're moving creatures that are not the most suitable around the globe. Keep in mind that pythons fight for prey with local predators such as alligators, which means they can have an impact on these animals by depriving them of their prey, forcing them out of their natural habitats, or even acting deviously. Burmese pythons and Florida snakes crossbreed, resulting in a super-resistant hybrid that's even more difficult to eradicate. People, of course, attempt to do it anyhow. They hunt pythons and even hold specific hunting competitions. However, there are just too many snakes, and their numbers are increasing. On the one hand, this is a terrifying thought, yet you're familiar with the story of China and the sparrows. China began an agricultural reform in the late 1950s and decided to eradicate sparrows. Why? Because these little birds were thought to eat the crops, so they had to go. The Chinese government waged war on sparrows. People made such a noise as they could, forcing the birds to take flight and refusing to let them land. The sparrows were just weary and collapsed to the ground. Almost 2 billion sparrows were eradicated in 6 months, and they actually had more crops. This, however, resulted in an increase of locusts and caterpillars. There were no longer any birds that ate the bugs on a regular basis, and as a result of the destruction of crops, starvation broke out, killing millions of people. Finally, the Chinese Academy of Sciences realized that the war on sparrows was a huge blunder. They had to import birds from other nations to help the population recover. Sparrows have been shown to be far less damaging to crops than locusts. People had to choose the lesser of two evils, as they say. When rabbits first came to Australia, though, things were different. To begin with, there were no such creatures in Australia until the 19th century, when rich settler Thomas Austin let his 13 wild rabbits roam freely around his farm. The rabbits ran so freely that they'd spread throughout the continent in 50 years. The rabbits ate crops, harmed grazing pastures, caused soil erosion, and wiped out certain native plant and animal species since there were so many of them. Farmers first attempted to keep rabbits away by erecting fences to protect their crops. This was ineffective. Destroying rabbit tunnels was a little more effective. They attempted to infect rabbits with an intentionally introduced virus in the 1950s, and while many died, the remainder gained immunity. Then there were poisons and other sorts of hunting. What's more, you know what? Rabbits are completely unconcerned about anything. There are an enormous amount of rabbits, just as there are an incredible number of honey badgers, and humans are still unable to do anything about it. Perhaps if predators were participating in the process, things would be a lot easier. When people don't meddle with wildlife, animals at various levels of the food chain can address problems like that on their own, and anybody, including ducks, may become a rescuer. Ducks, like vacuum cleaners that specialize in vermin, came to the rescue. Slugs and snails, as well as mosquitoes, larvae, grasshoppers, and other pests, are all eaten by ducks. One duck, for example, is said to consume around 200 grasshoppers every day. As a result, it has the potential to be more effective than any pesticide. Ducks tend to move in groups, making them easier to manage. This is why, since ancient times, farmers have utilized ducks to wipe away bugs. Why, I wondered, did China start importing sparrows if ducks can handle pests? Wasn't it simpler to raise a duck army? What's more, it actually exists. China was prepared to deploy 100,000 ducks to Pakistan in 2020 to assist combat of a local locust infestation. Consider the possibility of a duck army. We'll talk again later.